Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
How's everybody? Good? Everybody good to go? All righty. I don't think we have a lot of folks with us tonight. I guess it's getting toward vacation time. I don't know. We're gonna have a shorter session tonight anyway, because I've got an assignment for us. But so I'll just go ahead and dive right in. So I'll share my screen and we'll get started. As always, we'll review our weekly schedule to start with to see where we are. All right, so we're at week 7, class 7. Remember, we don't have class next week because of the holiday, and then when we return, we'll have our 3rd case study, and then we'll have one more night of content, and then we'll have our final case study for the final evening. So let's look at what we were to be working on this week. We were to interview an assistant principal or the disciplinarian. Biggest concerns about process and disciplinary incident, what system, PBS, code of conduct, what guides their decision making, observe student due process, and the school report back what you found. So the biggest issue that you generally find, there's two things that assistant principals or principals who process discipline will tell you. First is they're worried about consistency. You're going to hear that. I want to make sure that I'm doing that I'm being equitable in what I do. Don't use the word fair. Again, that's the place you go in the fall of the year and get a corn dog ride to Ferris wheel. There is no fair. We're looking for equitable. And the second one is how much time it takes because of due process. We spent a lot of time this semester. We spent a lot of time talking about due process. The reason why we spend a lot of time is because you got to do it. We have the substantive due process, and then we have procedure. Substance is what we're supposed to do, and procedure is what we do. And we have a disconnect too many times between the two. And again, you can't short circuit these things, just like when we talked about hiring back earlier in the semester. This is what has to happen. You better know what your part in that is. And as I pointed out even back then, districts that make you do all the reference checks and a lot of the legwork, we tend to shortcut those. But then we get in trouble when we hire somebody and we find out we didn't do the reference checks. They turned out to be an axe murderer. It's kind of the same thing with discipline. Is just give him this, give him that. We don't collect statements. We don't give the kid a chance to explain. We don't do those things, and then something bad happens. Please remember that at every level of the organization, your decision can be appealed. If you're an AP, it can be appealed to the principal. Principal can be appealed to the assistant, associate, or the area superintendent. That can be appealed to the superintendent. That can be appealed to the board. And if the board doesn't give them relief, they can go to court. It's like we talked about. There's 7 steps in this. Anything that you give out, I mean, there's an appeals process and due process. Some have a DTM, a discipline team meeting. Some have hearings. I mean, but the biggie is be consistent. Again, Amanda and I get caught doing something. You can't give Amanda a warning, send her back to class and shoot me. That's both arbitrary and capricious, and that's what we're trying to avoid. And we're trying to avoid the notion that certain kids get this and certain kids get that. So to that end, I've had 2 of our principal experts, again, one middle school, one high school. Let me share my screen. I've had them in our folder. Let me make sure that I reference where that is. I give people credit for their work. So here in Dr. Caton and Maraglia's folder, they've got a couple of documents that they use in their school. One of them actually was a document that Dr. Maraglia used when she was an elementary principal. So let's go to that one first. This is kind of a little process that they go through, like with elementary kids, to try to make sure that they go through the necessary due process, but that they are consistent with everybody that they do. It's not an exhaustive list, but this is a quick and dirty, like for an elementary kid. This is be something, and this is especially helpful if you have more than one person processing discipline. This one is mostly for a single person doing it, go quickly, but again, it would be the same. Now, Dr. Caton is principal at Aidan Grifton in Pitt County, Greenville. And what she's done is made a chart so that her APs and she will be consistent in what they assign. Here's the behaviors, here's what I expect you to sign, in order, go down the list. That way, and it has the explanation, all these things that they use. These are the ones that they get the most of, and they go right down the list. They go right down the list. Here's the behaviors, here's the responses, and so that they work on what we call in the business inter-rater reliability. It's just like when you submit your evidences to task stream. We have state trained graders, and they have to be evaluated themselves every so often. And their scores have to fall within a certain range so that there's reliability. So it doesn't matter if you get this grader or that grader. If you get a 3.5, then you get a 3.5. Well, the same thing, it's the same problem is with assistant principals. Now, everybody knows that some, are softer than others, some are easier, some are harder. But that's what you've got to work on is as a team, you've got to work on build a matrix like Dr. Caton did, but you've got to work that where, it doesn't matter which one of your APs handles this, or you or principal or whoever, that it's going to be pretty much consistent. It's not going to be racially identifiable or gender, we give the boys more than the girls or whatever. So the notion here is that you've got to find a way, whether you're using PBIS, whether you're using a code of conduct system, and that's the differential of those I just showed you. The first one was a PBIS chart. The second one was a code of conduct, where they don't use PBIS in the high school. They simply use their code of conduct. Regardless of what system that you use, you need to be consistent. Now, when I became a high school principal, I'm ashamed to say this, but now it's a large high school, full disclosure. I had 6 people processing discipline. That's how big we were. I had 6 people processing discipline, not counting the ones I had dragging them to the office. Just go get them in the room and bring them back. I'm talking about I had 6. And so you can imagine if you have 6, it was next person up. I did away with that grade level or alphabet or, bring them in, who's ever next takes the case. And the kids can't sit there and shop between them. I had them all in the office complex. No, everybody's got to be consistent. And you got to work on that, whether you've got one and you have to work on your own internal consistently, or whether you have 2 or more and you have to work on inter-rater reliability. That's the biggie, is be consistent, whatever you're going to do. So that's the first one. Second one is time. Don't shortcut the process. The APs are going to tell you, man, I spend too much time, it takes forever to get all those statements. But this is about your house now. Remember, you don't want to get fired over this, that you didn't do the things you need to do, that you didn't follow through with the due process. And so that's the notion here, is you got to hit the steps all the time. And you can't shortcut the process. Whatever the procedural due process is, that better be the substance of what you do. And so, but talk with your administration. Even if you can't witness a disciplinary incident being processed, talk to them about what their concerns are. Now, beyond consistency and beyond following due process, the next thing is that disciplinary actions should follow a path of restorative justice. We don't just do punishment for punishment's sake. We're trying to stop the behaviors and try to get the kid to do better. That should be the next piece. Involve parents, witness statements. I have all those in my response, but that's what you're going to do. But I don't want to spoil your interview with them if you haven't already done it. But those are the kinds of things, and you can do some follow-up questions, but that's what we're looking for. It takes time. You got to follow the process. You need to be consistent. You need to work together as a team of people, process, and discipline. All those things need to be done. Discipline is a big deal, as we talked about last week. All right. Anybody have any questions on your activity for the week? I'm looking for a note here. I wrote myself a note sometime during the week. I'll never find it though, but that's okay. Oh, I found it. We're good to go. All right. So I think I wanted to debrief on last week's case study. Anybody have any follow-up questions or thoughts after you wrote your reflection this week about last week's case study? The notion of last week's case study is very simple, that you understand that you can't move federal money, can't move state money, can't move local money. You can only spend it for what it's intended for. And you're told what that code is. You can't have, don't think you're hurting the team here. You can't come up with any new ideas. Now, one of the points that was made in one of the reflections last week is how ironical that it's called Leandro Wright when they lost the case. But the whole notion here on Leandro Wright is that every kid gets 8,000 because that's what it takes to get a basic ed. If you move it from him to give it to somebody, it costs more than that kid didn't get his Leandro Wright, which is his $8,000. And so I know that's kind of a misnomer when Leandro, the plaintiffs, lost the case, but that's what it's called, is the Leandro Wright. All right, so let's talk about next week's case. So next week's case is highly popular, highly controversial now. Conservative movement sweeping the country, a lot of consternation. I had a student 2 or 3 years ago said, I don't know why we're doing this case. This is old news. It is not old news. Unfortunately, it is not old news. But what I want you to think about when we look at next week's case, we are normal too, Jimmy and Willie. Jimmy and Willie represent, they're more metaphor. Jimmy and Willie are any protected or any subgroup that you might have in your building, exceptional children, LGBTQ kids, boys, girls, racial minorities, Hmong, Vietnamese, Spanish, African American, whatever. And so really the whole notion of the case is dig into the law, equal protection, 14th Amendment, all the bullying law, cyber, dig into all the different laws around that case. And I want you to specifically, if you can't remember this, write it down. I want you to specifically dig into heckler's veto. It's in your textbook. I want you to understand heckler's veto. Heckler's veto is when the loud people get their way and we abridge the rights of others because we're afraid of what the loud people will do. We'll give in to them and we'll take rights away from other people because the loud heckling, the notion here that, I tell Tiffany, I'm sorry, Tiffany, I can't let you do this because I'm afraid what Amanda might do to you or Meredith might do to you. And I take Tiffany's rights rather than make Amanda and Meredith behave themselves. That's the notion here. I need for you to dig into that and make sure you understand that one. So that's our next case study coming up. You've got an extra week in between because of the break. Hopefully your teams are already meeting and working on those. So that will be a good one. All right, so we talked about being consistent. We've talked about our last case study, our next case study. And remember, the next case study is metaphor. Look at it not just for LGBTQ kids, and that's important enough, but look at it for any protected class of kids. Make sure that you look at it for all of them. What are starting with the 14th Amendment and the 5th Amendment, by the way, but starting with the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law, and follow that down. And what rights do these folks have? Look at civil rights law. Look at gay rights. Look at all of those different rights along the way. That's the notion of this case study, is what you're to do. Remember FERPA. Now that's another hidden clue for next week's case, for the next case study. Remember FERPA. When parents come in and start complaining about somebody else's child, remember, we can't enter into conversations with them about somebody else's child. I told you I'm going to get rich and famous because when I retire, I'm going to write a book, and it's called Discipline for Other People's Children. Because parents always want somebody else's kids disciplined. They always want to be in somebody else's business. And so remember, FERPA laws keep us from engaging in that kind of destructive behavior, which is never good. All right, so we covered that and that. I want to do another quick review of the data manual. And I want to show you this piece. And this is that extra assignment that I had for you. As I said, I was going to try to, going into the break here, I always plan for this to be a light evening. I can close that and that. So here is your manual again. You need to really dig into this manual and understand all these things. You say, well, this looks like a bunch of money. This is the real deal on data and disciplinary reporting and being involved with police reporting and incidents. This is the real deal. I mean, this thing couldn't be laid out any better. It tells you everything that you need to know and how to use it. Now, if you're one of those people who has issues or trouble just reading and comprehending, now I'm gonna apologize before I show it to you because it is dry. But under Zoom session 7, I have the video that DPI puts out. It's 58 minutes long. I would like for you to watch that video. And now, full disclosure, they just kind of read the thing. But it's, rather than me sitting here wasting your time, when you get a minute, watch that video. And it goes through and has some explanations, and it has the people who are, Amy Powell Moman is really the guru of this thing now, because after Ken Gaddis that I worked with retired. But you'll get a good perspective, and maybe it will be a little clearer. But spend some time with that video. I've updated. Here's the manual I just showed you. The PBI, this is your second. Again, I'm going to be brief tonight. I'd like for you to spend some time on the PBIS website as well. If you're not familiar with PBIS, if you are, then don't worry about it. But you need to dig into these two websites, or you need to dig into this one, and you need to watch that video. Discipline is a big deal. It is a big part, unfortunately, of what you're going to do as an assistant principal. You're going to have bus duty and do this. It's just that simple. And if you don't do it well, or either one of them well, you'll never get a chance to be a principal. Now, I'll be the first to admit that how good you are at bus duty and discipline has little to do with how good or effective you can be as an instructional leader, as a principal. But you'll never get the chance if you don't master these two things. If you can't make a supervision schedule, if you can't monitor it, if you can't make sure that kids can get to and from the building safely and operate safely in the business and have some order and some discipline, you'll never get a chance to be a principal and be an instructional leader. It's just the way the world works. Nobody gets to battlefield promotion. Everybody's got to be an assistant principal first. All right. So up to now, anybody have any questions on any of the content we've covered? We've covered personnel, we've covered discipline, we've covered exceptional children, intervention teams, we've covered finance, how funding works, finance law. We've covered all those pieces. We're kind of getting in the short roads now. We've got, a protected class case study coming up. Again, you can fill in the blank. This one, Jimmy and Willie happen to be LGBTQ. They're gay, but it could be any protected class of folks that somebody else came to your school and complained about. Look specifically at Willie's behavior. Look at the principal's behavior. Is this a case of antecedent behaviors? Little things got out of control and got to become big things, got the community in an uproar. Is that the case here? Maybe this wouldn't be such an uproar if we'd addressed this behavior to start with. I mean, inappropriate displays of affection are the same regardless of the gender. And so those are the kinds of things you need to look at. You need to start putting some of these disparate pieces that we've had this semester. You need to start putting them together. Go back to the night when we did EC, FERPA. Jimmy and Willie might, you know, they can we talk about anybody's child, much less an EC child? Heckler's veto, discipline. You know, have we due process these kids? Did we ignore the little behaviors and let them get big? Antecedent behaviors, talk about that. Start identifying the different pieces in this case. I understand that. Hey, I know that. We ought not do that. We should do this. You need to start putting them together, because this is going to prepare you for the last one where you got to pull everything, because it's about exceptional children and about basic ed. And it's about Leandro, right? To get to a basic ed, it's about all of it. The last one will be about all of it. You're going to have to pull multiple pieces together in that last one. This is get you prepped for that. The first two were thinking exercises. Change your lens, know the law. Now let's start. Can I begin to apply what I have learned? That's what the third case study is about. All right, so last thing I want to cover tonight, and again, I want to be brief tonight, I want to cover the skip, which is the next evidence that you will have. Now, again, you don't have to start the skip until the fall if you don't want to. I have some students who have requested to start this summer, and so that'll be fine. So I'm going to cover the skip with you right now. So let me share my screen. And here we go. So the skip is stakeholder community involvement plan. So let's look at an overview of the task. So what we're going to try to do here is, in the end, is build a marketing plan for our school. But with the notion being not kind of like a marketing plan where we go out and try to recruit people, but a marketing plan where we get people involved, we get community and families and parents involved with the education of their child. That's the notion here. So lead a team consisting of internal to create a stakeholder community involvement plan. We'll cultivate involvement and interaction aimed at parental involvement in school community outreach and partnerships. So in task one, the candidate will form a skip team and lead a collaborative needs assessment, determine the gaps in communication between the internal and external communities. Let's stop right there. This is a needs assessment for gaps in communications, period. The biggest mistake that students make right off the bat is they start a needs assessment, and I see everything from, you know, desk or textbooks or academic need. No, a needs assessment, the gaps in communication between the school and parents and parents/community. Now you say, well, Dale, how in the world? Your teacher working conditions survey has a whole section on this. Now, if you're in South Carolina, you have a parent survey as a part of Cognitive Advanced Ed. It's actually, you can access it through your report card. But we do, this is and some districts do a separate parent survey. But, you know, but what we're looking for is, what are the gaps in communication between the school and the parents? It doesn't matter how good of activities that we have going on over school, parents don't know about. So that's the notion here, is we're trying to figure out what those gaps are. So let's go down here and look specifically at this. The candidate lives, excuse me. Okay. Needs assessment shall include a background description of the setting. You've already done that in your OMA. A clear statement of the person needs assessment. A clear statement is we're trying to determine gaps in communication between the school and the community/parents. Just that direct. A list of participants who participate in the needs assessment, analysis of the finding. Again, go to your teacher working condition survey or your state parent survey in South Carolina. I should have already had it loaded. I had it loaded earlier. This is what it looks like in North Carolina. This is one of my doctorals that I was working with earlier today. Community support and involvement. Parents are influential decision makers. These are the communication. This is where you'd find your gaps in communication. Right here, community support and involvement. Parent guardians know what's going on in this school. Don't reinvent the wheel. You know, there's about 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 questions. If you want to resurvey those questions yourself using SurveyMonkey or Google Docs or whatever, but this is what we're talking about right here. This would show gaps in communication. You have the same questions on the South Carolina one. And there's a couple more over here on equity that you could look at if you wanted to.
Michael, man, can you remind me what this is called since I'm in South Carolina?
The van said, well, it's actually the parent survey is on your state report card. See if we can pull it up quick. That's the wrong browser. Go to this browser. Okay, if we go to SC, okay, South Carolina Department of Education. Okay, let's see, families and community, I believe it is. Let's see, grants. Report cards. Let's see. Test scores, report cards, accountability. Let's see what we got here. Their districts. View report card. Let's see. State goals, academic rank. Data, students. State goals, preparing for success. Student progress. Which one of these is it under? Student engagement. This happens every time I go in here. I go to the wrong place a time or two, compare schools, download data. Form, test scores, reports. Let's see if it's under reports. Come on, you can do it. Here it is. There we go. We have a yearly parent survey in South Carolina. Let's see. Okay. See, here's the parent involvement survey. You can take it yourself. So we're going to have to find that results of this thing. So let's go back. Okay. Let's see if we've got it here. There we go. Homeschool relations. They contact me to say good things about my child, invite me to the classroom, returns my calls and emails. Right there it is. That's what we're talking about. That one right there, the homeschool relationship on the South Carolina one is what we're looking at. That's where you'd find your gaps in communication. Now you'd have to find the one for your school. But that's it right there.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome. That is it. So back to, but yeah, that's where we start. You know, we don't, you know, we look at the questions on our state parent survey that comes directly to our school, and we're looking for those gaps in communication. So that's all we're looking for. List of participants, what we use, analysis of the findings. So I took this straight from the teacher work. Now, if your district does a separate parent survey, now in Charlotte Meck, we did a separate parent survey as well that dug a little bit deeper. But if your district doesn't do one, you've all got teacher working condition survey, the state survey, and you've all got, in South Carolina, got the state survey. If you got something that's a little more fine-tuned to your district, you can include that as well. A set of recommendations that identifies avenues of communication that will be established. And then a set of recommendations that include short and long-term objectives. All right. This is the second part where we just run completely off the road and hit a telephone pole. So let's look at those last two bullets there. A set of recommendations that identifies avenues of communication that will be established. That simply says, who do we want to communicate with, and how are we going to do that? And the last one is, again, who and how, and it's short and long-term objectives. Now, let me be very clear here. This is where we kind of, this is the biggest problem that we have. Short-term objectives should be things based off of something like social media. We're going to have a web page. We're going to have a Twitter feed. We're going to have a Facebook. We're going to find whatever the best way to communicate with parents is. That's our short term. Now, long term is not just doing short term longer or with more intensity or frequency. Long term is completely different. The notion in short term is, how do we hook these people and get them to come to our building? Not for a ball game, but for something academic. That's our long-term goal. Once we've got them hooked, and once we're communicating and they're ours, we're going to get them here to do something academic. So our long-term goal is family math night, family reading night, family EOG night. You know, those kinds of things where we get parents in, and we in effect are saying to them, help us help you help your child. Now, one of the things that's come to the fore during the pandemic, unfortunately, is this parents' notion that it's the school's complete responsibility to educate their children. We've got to reverse that and get back to the notion that our job is to help you educate your child. family math night where we work with parents we give them manipulatives, how to work with their kids at home. Family reading night where here's how you work with your child. Here's maybe a book, a big book, something like that. The notion of short and long-term goals. Short term is how do we communicate with them? Long term, now that we've got them, what are we going to do with them? Now, there's a fallacy in our business. And hopefully we've begun that process of changing our lens and understanding that there's some things that you got to know as a school administrator. Things aren't the same as when you're a teacher. One of the things you got to know as a school administrator is having parents in your building will not make your scores go up automatically. There are people that are dumb enough that believe that if I can just get parents in my building for any reason, my test scores will go up. That's not true. Actually, if they're there for the wrong reasons, they can make your scores go down. But if we can get them there for the right reason, something academic that we're supporting with them to go, that they can then go and work with their children, that's what we're looking for. But coming to a ball game or a talent show will not make your test scores go up. I tell y'all aren't old enough to understand this, but from my era, the notion was if it was all about just getting parents to your building, in the eastern part of North Carolina, we'd have a barbecue. In the Piedmont, we'd have a womanless wedding or a donkey basketball game. And in the western part of the state, we'd have a womanless wedding. I mean, those were old time events in those parts of the world that people used to think that get people to come to school would make school better. It won't. I was talking with one of my colleagues. We were reminiscing. When I was in central office in CMS, we had a high school, Independence, that won like 10 state football titles in a row at 4A. On a Friday night, we'd have 40,000 folks go to watch a ball game at Independence on Friday night. It was the most incredible thing you've ever seen. We finally had to move to Memorial Stadium downtown and have Big Friday. That's how big it got. 40,000 people at a high school football game, out in Mint Hill. Just you've never seen anything like it in your life. I mean, they'd pack out Memorial Stadium, but their test scores didn't go up a bit. They had 40,000 people some weeks on their campus, but that didn't make their test scores go up. It's what you do with them once you get them. So don't confuse. Long term is not just doing short term over and over. We're going to maintain our website from next year. That's not long term. That's just a continuation of a short term. Short term is the website. Long term is we're going to have family math night, family reading night. Now, I'm going to tell you the best skip I ever saw. It was very non-traditional, but the best skip I ever saw was at Northwest Guilford. I had 6 interns there at the same time. 6 at the same school. We ran a lot through Northwest Guilford. Ralph and I were friends. Ralph Kitley, that's a name from the blast from the past. Y'all won't remember Ralph was a famous basketball player from North Carolina back in my era. I think Ralph played at Duke. But that's another story. But we got started with them and things were going good. And they had a business teacher, Keisha Sinclair, and she was just a whirlwind. I mean, she was young and aggressive and had come from the business world and was the business marketing deck and all that. And she came up with this idea. I don't know how she did, but I claim no credit. Diana Birdsey and Keisha, they were kind of like the dynamic duo. But so their event was a job fair. But what they did was they went out, they partnered with Novant. Again, this is in Guilford County, Northwest Guilford, just north of the city of Greensboro, out in a suburban area, fairly affluent, but they've just been a kind of a run-of-the-mill high school. Good solid BC high school on their report card, everything good, nice kind of suburban setting, Kids nice, nice place. But Keisha's event was a job fair. She partnered with Novant. They put on a big luncheon. I went, was an honored guest and all that, put on the suit and tie, shaved that day, the whole deal. Took a bath. And it was very, very nice. But here was the trick. So you had all these, each one of these desks in their gym, they had this is a job that you can get in the medical industry. On that desk, they had a sheet of paper that said, this is the college degree that you need to get this job. And these are the advanced courses in high school that you would need in order to get into that college to get this good paying job. And so they didn't just run the high school seniors through there. They invited the freshmen and their parents to the job fair, had a night. They had a day just for them all during the day. And they let the freshmen out of the classes. And those freshmen went by and they saw these nice people, these good jobs, this college education, their parents with them. The next year, they had the most kids signed up for advanced classes of any high school in North Carolina. It transformed that school. They went from a BC school to an A school in 1 year. Those parents got involved. You need to be doing your homework. Let's sign you up for that advanced class. And they did follow up with them so that the parents knew what the courses their kids were signing up for. Back in those days, you started advanced courses as your sophomore year, then you could take AP your junior and senior. So the freshman year is the time to get them. That's when the iron was hot. But that's what Keisha came up with. And we ran, every one of those freshmen left their class, ran them through the gym, saw that, their parents there with them. It's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. You can look it up. Most kids taking advanced courses of any high school in North Carolina in 1 year. Now that makes your test scores go up. That makes things happen in your school. Family math night, family reading night, family EOG, family EOC night, all those things where you get parents in and say, let us help you. Let us support you. You don't know how to teach reading, let us help you with your child reading. You don't know how to teach a child math, let's get these manipulatives and help you with your children. That's your long-term goal. That's what can transform your school. Then the second part, the second prompt of prompt 2 of task 1 is simply go back to that same document that I showed you a minute ago, the teacher working condition survey or your parent survey, and look at the one on, let's see. Look at the one, did I close it back up? No. I want to show you this because I want you to use the right one. I want you to look at the one on school leadership. Not teacher leadership. We've already looked at teacher leadership. Remember when we did that in the APTEL? We already looked at teacher leadership. I want you to look at school leadership. Right there it is. And so this is what the prompt says. The candidate will lead a team to conduct an organizational analysis to determine the climate of the school. The North Carolina Teacher Working Conditions Survey may be used in an event a secondary climate survey is not feasible. That would be for us, TWC, South Carolina, you use that parent survey. The result, the candidate should evaluate the school leadership. Do not do teacher leadership. Don't even add it in. School leadership. And then you will you'll evaluate the results and determine the strengths and weaknesses in school leadership. From this, you will make recommendations to be addressed by the school improvement plan. So at the end of task 1, we've got long-term and short-term goals, and we've got recommendations to improve school leadership. Those are the 3 things that we got to come out of task 1 with. Now, don't shortchange task 1 because it's going to go real quick after that. Because all we have to do in task 2 is identify the short the fiscal and human resources, see right here, fiscal and human resources necessary to do the things that you just said you wanted to do, short-term, long-term, and recommendations for school leadership improvement. What will it take to pull those three things off that you just said that you wanted to do? Now, under skip, did I already pull it up? Yeah, I did. Under task and prompts. So this is what you would use in task 2, this one right here. And then you're going to use this one in task 3 when you write out the entire plan. Specific activity timeline, person responsible, resources needed, fiscal, that means money, and human, that means people. Who's going, and you're going to have 3 specific activities minimum. One short term. We're going to start a Facebook page, or we're going to have a website. We're going to start our own website. Well, how much money is it going to take? Well, we got to buy, the IP address, $1,500. How many people is going to have a webmaster? We're going to have at least one person to do that. In the long term, we're going to have family math night. We're going to need manipulatives. We're going to need to feed them. So those are the kinds of things. And then, of course, in task 3, you're going to flush this thing out completely, and it will become your marketing plan. Then you're going to add your summative assessment method. Remember, summative assessment is of the adults. What's your goal? And then what's your indicator of success? Your goal, could be, we have, our parent survey goes up, we have participation rate, or our test scores go up. And then, along the way, what's our indicator of success? You know the difference between a goal. Goal is where we want to get to eventually. Indicator of success is how far we got. Did we get this far this year? We need to get this much done. And so this is task 2. This is task 3. Handy dandy. And so when you get done, back to this, you simply 2, you identify your resources, and 3, you make your plan. Right here, things you got to have, you write your narrative, you summarize it. 4, you do the remainder of the competencies that you didn't do with the OMA. So again, the time spent should be in that task 1. That's where you do really all your work on this one. It's not, once you get task 1 done, the rest of it's easy peasy. But your short term's got to be something that's social media or something modern. Can't be horse and buggy, telegraph, Pony Express. Needs to be something modern, some modern communication tool or system, social media, something that people can do on their phones, to get these parents, get in communication with them, to get them there. Now, my second story, and one that kind of closes out our evening here. I worked with a large group. I think I had 4 or 5 in it from Parkland High School in Winston-Salem. And they came up with this wonderful parent event for their Hispanic community, which was rather large. No, let me be clear. It wasn't rather large. It was very large. And they really had that the Hispanic community had not really been involved in their school. And they developed this wonderful program, and it was, and all that. And so they had it, and they had either 2 or 3 people show up for this event that they were in. They had capacity for several hundred, and they couldn't figure out what went wrong. And I said, well, I have no idea. I mean, I live about an hour from Winston, but I have no idea why they didn't come. So we asked around, and we found Father Jose, who's pastor over at the local church, for most of the Hispanics went to, and we partnered with Reverend Pastor Jose, and found out that most of these people, they had to use the bus to get to school. And so we had to plan it at a different time, and make sure that the word got out through the church to the bus stops, what buses they would need to take to get to school and all that. And we ran it the second time, and we had 400. Let me say that again. The first time we had 2, not 200, we had 2. The second time we had 400 because we partnered with the right person, got the communication out, got a system, figured out how to take the buses, how to communicate, got a little social media platform. I think we use WhatsApp. How many of you have WhatsApp on your phone for your social group? I do, as old as I am. There's mine right there in green, as you can see. This is my group right here. That's my social media group right there. That we communicate back and forth. I'm not much of a Facebook user other than for my Santa Claus pictures. You know, so you know, or Instagram. I'm not a big Twitter fan. I've come across enough stupid people in my line of work that I don't need to. You know, I don't need to be in contact with more in my social life. But yeah, I mean, we went to WhatsApp. Now, you know, full disclosure, it's what, $1 now. Used to be free. But that's how we connected the group at Parkland, was with WhatsApp. You know, send out the bus information, what bus to catch, what times, and planned our events around the times that the buses ran. The city buses. I'm not talking about school buses. I'm talking about the city buses in Winston-Salem. And man, their principal got a big promotion, and I was like, you didn't have anything to do with this. This was this bunch that put this together. But now, full disclosure, he thought it was a wonderful idea and got behind it and threw some money to them and for refreshments and those kinds of things. So I can't say he didn't have anything to do with it, but you know, and he was smart enough to realize and recognize a good idea when he saw it. And Wendy and Lisa were Lisa Bohr, Wendy, Dr. Wendy, they were the 2, and Jonathan. We had, I think, 5, but they were the progenitors of this. I've seen some wonderful things, but if you can have any kind of impact at your school, help us help you help your child. That's the notion of the skill. And you can use it as a force multiplier. But again, just getting parents in your building will not make your scores go up. If you get them in for the right purposes, you can literally move mountains. They can become a fulcrum to your lever. All right, I see my time's about up. I told you I wouldn't keep you but an hour tonight. I want you to watch that video that the state puts out on the disciplinary data reporting manual about how to use it so you don't get yourself in trouble underreporting or misreporting or whatever. And also look at that PBIS. If you've got, you know, any PBIS, if you don't have experience, basically look at it from the form of learning a disciplinary process. If your district uses code of conduct, spend some time with your district code of conduct. Questions you have for me tonight?
Dr. Lamb, I have one question. Our tasks, we should be also dropping them into the Dropbox, correct?
Absolutely. I've got them right there. I mean, I always have people, I like people who work ahead. You know, the thing about it is if you can work ahead and you can, you know, where you can knock out maybe your skip and cap, you knock out your skip and your cap in the fall, in the spring, and all you have to do is your SOP. It'll make your spring go a lot better because you're gonna have to get your, you know, your folio done, you know, with all your artifacts in it. You've got several other things, some other projects that you have to do. Working ahead is always a good thing, so that last semester won't be so stressful. You know, we require people who finish in the summer, we require them to be ahead. They had to have their cap done before they even went to summer school. I mean, they're supposed to do their cap and their SOP their last semester. They had to have their cap done before they went, or we knew they wouldn't finish. I mean, the whole notion here is you want to finish on time, and you want to. There's a lot of good activities in your last semester with Dr. Stone. You'll just love him, and you'll love the activities that he does. It's about personal leadership. Has a lot of value. But if you're stressed trying to get your portfolio done in task stream, you won't get much value out of that time. He has a lot of scenarios. He has a lot of activities and standards, has a lot of personal leadership, Johari's window, knowing yourself, those kinds of things. And so back to Tiffany's question, if I share my screen, you can see right in our, let me close that, right here. Skip task and prompts, assignment Dropbox, turn it in, check, and you can go to let's see, you can go to OMA task for review. And you can see, you can review your skip task as well. I'll review them for you. So what I can actually do, look at that. OMA. Skip task for review right there. And I'll review them. I'll go right here into I'll go right here. And then I've got Dropbox, and then you won't have to repeat them next semester. You'll already have them. We have a system worked out where they know that. But if you want to get ahead, now you don't have to. And now, please remember, my shell stays open all the time. So as soon as summer school's over, they'll take Blackboard down. But when it comes back up, I grade every day right on through August. If you want to keep on working, whatever you want to do is up to you. I don't ever want people to slow down.
Dr. Lamb.
Knock it out.
Dr. Lamb.
Yes.
My principal actually does a book study over the summer with parents
Yes.
raising kids in a digital world. Is that
Yes.
short term or is that long term?
That's short term.
Okay.
When I say that, your part in that would be short term, helping him set it up. Now the actual, when they have him come in, that's long term. The actual what he's doing with
Okay.
the actual content, but so like that one would be the short term on that one would be is getting the list, getting the information. How do you get the information out to the parents about that? And then the actual thing that he does with them would be the actual content would be the long term. That's a good example of one going into the other. One kind of feeding, but you got to have something in front that like you would be involved in. How do we get the word to these parents? How do we get them to commit to do this? What are we going to do to inform them that we're doing this and that they need to do it and what the content of it is? That's the kind of piece you start with. So that would be the short-term piece of that. The long-term would be the actual sessions that he does with them, where he works with them on how to work with their child. That's a perfect example of help you help your child. So that's a long-term event, but there's a piece that, you don't just advertise it and show up and parents know to come. There's that hook piece. How do we get them to come? How do we get them the knowledge that they should be coming? How do they know when it is, where it is? What's the best way to disseminate it? We're not going to do snail mail and throw stuff in their mailbox. What platforms are there on where we can contact them and let them know? Do we put a big sign out in front of the yard here at the school, on the school sign? What if people don't bring their kids to school? I mean, it's that the short term is that logistics piece of how do we inform it? The long term is the actual program. I know not many people, but some people still put their kids on the school bus instead of the school. Not everybody, not in this part of the world, because everybody in this part of the world drives their kids to school. The line to elementary schools miles long. I don't understand that. As I tell these ladies, I told you, as I tell these ladies here in this nice neighborhood at Lake Norman, how in the world are your kids going to learn about sex if you don't let them ride the school bus? They don't find the humor in that, though. I can't figure that out. That's an old time joke from back in my era. I've enjoyed it as usual. Watch your videos. I will see you in 2 weeks. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight.